Good day. Welcome at our session about Azure AI landing zones. Together with my colleague
Niek Smits, working now for 7 years for Microsoft as an Azure specialist, 10 plus years in the IT industry, and I love working with Azure. How about you?
Yeah, me too. I'm already working for 10 years now with Microsoft, with Azure, and already working, I think, 13 years with the Azure platform. So I really love the technology, I love the platform, and I love the experience of today to share with you what the new capabilities are with AI on our platform and what the Azure AI landing zone can bring to you. Today we have a session, and what we share in this session is we start with the general overview of the Azure AI infrastructure and the capabilities you have with Azure and the things you have to think about. Next, we're gonna share with you when you need an Azure AI landing zone so that you have a good understanding when to apply the Azure AI landing zone. And then we go a little bit into the technical depth of technical details, I have to say, of the Azure AI landing zone platform. And we share with you what it is, how you can use it, and how it also integrates, for instance, with Azure AI Foundry and with the security capabilities of our platform.
Love it, a lot of ground to cover, but before diving into that rabbit hole, let's start from the top. Let's start with why. Why are we doing all this? While this new era of AI is extremely exciting for everybody, we're not doing tech for tech's sake. At the end of the day, we need to ground ourselves in what matters most, and that's business impact. And across the world, we see a lot of great AI use cases popping up. They all have one thing in common, and that is that they add value in one or more of these areas. They reshape business processes, they enrich employee experiences, making them more happy and efficient in their job. They reimagine the way we interact with customers, and they accelerate the ability to innovate with products. And the way companies are approaching this is by starting off with many different pilots across the organization, which again then start with many great and unique ideas that we see in practice. The goal is then to start scaling into production. From that point on, the value starts pouring in many cases. Along that way, companies see a lot of challenges popping up. Challenges span from a lack of agility to start using the newest technology, the newest AI models, up until the data that is not ready yet to start being used to build the AI applications at scale. Up until the integration piece, companies are struggling to really start infusing all the technologies together, stitching everything together with integration. Burdens them, takes up a lot of time and energy. Now, if we would pivot and think about the way companies are transcending these challenges, I think we need to ground ourselves first in one of the most fundamental truths in life. And that is, the only constant is change. Change in markets, change in the way customers want to interact with you, change in regulatory landscape, change in the threat landscape, let's say. Therefore, the need to become more agile as a company becomes more crucial. You need to be able to pivot to all of this change. And with that, you also need to have a certain ease to start innovating. You need to have a powerful toolbox at your disposal to start achieving your most ambitious goals. Oh, and by the way, that toolbox, that shouldn't just be a toolbox, shiny toolbox sitting next to your current environment. No, it needs to integrate, needs to adapt with your current environment, needs to be practical. Now, when I think about this, I think about a manufacturing company that I worked with back actually on a use case. They migrated a big chunk of their application landscape into Azure. And after a couple of weeks, I called them and said, you know, what did you now actually experience after this whole endeavor? Leave out all the marketing slides. Is there something you saw change? And they said they reduced the management burden of the infrastructure by 1 day per week. In addition to that, you need to have a certain ease to start innovating. You need to have a toolbox that is powerful enough to let you achieve your most ambitious goals. And by the way, that toolbox shouldn't be just a shiny toolbox sitting next to your current environment. It should integrate where you currently are. Companies that have embraced Azure see significant increases in both areas. In fact, most companies agree that embracing Azure has enabled them to start adopting AI at scale. When I think about this, one of the examples that comes to mind is an engagement that I had with one of the largest manufacturing companies in the Netherlands. Well, they migrated a big chunk of their application landscape into Azure, after which I called them and I said, well, what did you see change after this engagement? Now, they reduced the infrastructure management burden from 5 days back to 4 days in many ways. In addition to that, they had an internal IT ticket backlog of 80 tickets. They reduced that back to 10 in a couple of weeks. And that gave them some breathing space to accept new business from their new projects from the business units. Now, this is a good example on what it means to really start becoming a bit more agile and anticipating on your business needs, let's say. Another great example is BlackRock. BlackRock, one of the biggest asset management firms in the world. They've been pouring in resources into their data centers over the past years, and they made a decision to start migrating as a result of that. They get to market quicker. They now have new rollouts instead of in weeks instead of quarters. Now, if we take a look on how Microsoft actually makes this happen, I think it's wise that we need to ground ourselves a bit in what Microsoft's mission is. Let's start from there. It's to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. Now, with that, the vision that we have for AI, we've been pretty consistent over the years. We want to make AI available for everybody. We want to democratize AI. And that led us now, where we currently are, Copilot as a UI for AI. With first-party Copilot, simple out-of-the-box solution, ready for use for enterprise. If you want to build your own Copilot, you can start building them with Copilot Studio, a low-code way to start your journey. And then we have the Azure AI Foundry, where you can start building AI applications at scale. Now let's take a look under the hood on what's making this all possible. When we look under the hood, what we see is a suite of more than 200 solutions grouped into different areas, with solutions like Azure OpenAI Service, which is, for example, now being used by the National Basketball Association, the NBA in the US, where they analyze all court movements from all players. They relate that back to league statistics and give the information back to their users via an application that they have, the NBA app. It's a beautiful example on how to reimagine the way you interact with your customers. On the data side, we have Fabric to help you prepare the data for AI use and building these AI use cases, resolving the data silos. In addition to that, we have the tools to integrate everything. Tools like GitHub, Visual Studio are all connected. In addition to that, we have Azure Monitor and Application Insights to increase the overall observability over the whole landscape. Now let's take a quick step back and really look at what we're seeing here. Simplification of the IT landscape is one of the main goals of every company that I've worked with over the years. Hundreds of different applications, thousands sometimes. Different technology, everybody needs to be upskilled on this technology. And at the end of the day, everything needs to be integrated and stitched to each other. This greatly increases the complexity and reduces the amount of agility that you have as a company. The power of this suite is not in one single solution. The power of it is actually the way they're being built. They're strengthening each other. You don't need to spend time to integrate everything together. Therefore, it reduces the complexity. And you could say you realize a certain amount of synergy of leveraging this suite. 1 + 1 = 3. Now today we're going to deep dive a bit more on the AI infrastructure piece and the AI landing zones in general, which touch on security and indeed also observability. If we look at the AI infrastructure piece, we focus our efforts into 3 main pillars. First, it needs to be powerful enough to let you achieve your most ambitious goals. Second, it needs to be secure enough to make sure that you're safe. And third, it shouldn't be a shiny toolbox sitting next to your environment. Microsoft acknowledges that every customer is unique. We need to meet you where you currently are. Now, from the powerful piece, you need compute. And if you think about compute, many people in the context of AI think about GPUs. Now, GPUs, many people know these as the graphical cards that enable gaming, let's say. Scientists soon found out that these cards could also be used to solve complex mathematical problems. But GPUs are only a small piece. Microsoft, when we view power at a bird's eye view, we realize this by having more than 60 regions worldwide, backed by 300 data centers and counting, more than any other hyperscaler. When people think about power in the context of AI, they think about supercomputers, basically a bunch of systems stitched together, doing high computational work. There's even a list of the 500 fastest systems in the world. Microsoft is the only hyperscaler in the world that is mentioned in the top 100 of that 500, not once, but 8 times. With the fastest system in the US, number 4, and in Western Europe even we have a system, I think it's 83 from the top of my head. It just goes to show that we focus on this power, and we keep focusing on this power with the investments that we're doing in the platform. Investments that could span up till more than 1 billion per week. From a security perspective, let's be clear on one thing: Microsoft runs on trust. If companies don't trust us, it's over for us. So let's be clear on a couple of things. Your data is your data. Your data is not being used to serve any foundational models. This is furthermore backed by more than 10,000 full-time employees focusing on security alone, and more than $20 billion investment in the next 5 years. And as we mentioned, every customer is unique. We acknowledge that. So we need to meet you where you are. Our platform needs to be adaptive, let's say. We do that in a couple of different ways. You can start embracing Azure by leveraging infrastructure as a service, or start modernizing with platform as a service, services from Azure. In addition to that, the fastest way to the cloud is by leveraging Azure VMware services, shifting big VMware workloads into the cloud in a very fast way. Companies that do this usually want to avoid, let's say, license increases from other vendors, or want to keep using the tools that are familiar for them. And finally, we acknowledge that some customers want to maximize their data center investments, or for whatever other reason want to remain on-premise with a certain piece of their IT landscape. We therefore bring the power of Azure in the on-premise environment with solutions like Azure Arc, extending the management plane from Azure to on-premises or other clouds, unifying the way you manage your whole IT landscape. Another way on how to reduce the complexity. In addition to that, you can also start building cloud-native applications on-premise by bringing the innovation power and Azure Kubernetes services into your on-prem systems. When I think about this, I think about Sanofi, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. They migrated 15,000 VMs using Azure VMware services. In addition to that, the remaining on-premise systems, they made a bridge from Azure to that using Azure Arc, extending the management plane, reducing the management burden in the process. What you see now is that they reduced time and cost by 30%. In addition to that, they decreased the mean time to recovery with 500%, becoming more resilient in the process. So let's conclude. The way Microsoft approaches Azure AI Infrastructure is we make sure that it's powerful enough, secure enough, and it's adaptive to meet you where you are. Now this is it from a bird's eye view. I love to get a bit more deeper into the weeds, right, Dylan?
Yeah, thank you. So let's shift gears here a bit. Nick, you showed all the possibilities of the Candy Shop, the Azure platform. And what's really next in this presentation is how to govern this and how to use this in a secure and well-governed way from an infrastructure perspective. So, as you already said, many organizations are trying out AI, Gen AI capabilities in the platform, and they are kind of struggling to bring that to production, right? And what we try to achieve with the Azure AI Landing Zone is to give you a head start with a well-governed infrastructure that you deliver to your business, where they can develop generative AI solutions in a kind of a pilot phase, but also rapidly scale to production. The other side of the story is when you don't do that, they just use the Azure platform, but don't have production readiness in their mind. So probably they don't think about where will the AI app land, how will it scale, how will it connect to my crown jewels data sources, how will I monitor it. So halfway their experimentation, they run into these problems. And probably you already have multiple of these initiatives running in your organization. So every community is doing the same things over and over again, and maybe take other decisions, other routes to their production destination. And that generates a lot of extra cognitive load for those teams. So the AI Ready Landing Zone is really to help those teams to have a head start in a well-governed setup. So if you look at this picture, it's showing the evolution cycle of applications. So the Azure Landing Zone is really there for the prepare phase. You set up your infrastructure to get prepared so that the consumers, the business units, the developers can properly use your platform, and that you already have an opinionated implementation and governance of your AI Ready Landing Zone. Is an AI Ready Landing Zone needed always, or for every use case, or for every audience? Maybe not. And let me explain here a little bit more. If you look today at the use cases, then you typically have AI consumers to AI integrators. So the AI consumer is really the most simplest form, and the AI creator is the most extreme form. Let me go a little bit deeper to show in which cases and for which audiences you probably need that Azure AI Ready Landing Zone. If you look at AI consumers, as you're already told, we have tools like Copilot, but also AI-infused apps like Outlook, Teams, Word, etc. that we use on a day-to-day uses to optimize our own work. And we can extend those tools with Copilot Studio to build our own agents and govern over our own data or our team data. These are typically use cases where you don't need an Azure AI Landing Zone because it comes integrated in the app itself. If you then look at the second audience, that is the AI integrator. And what they typically do is they have an existing application that they infuse with AI capabilities that are available in the Azure platform, and then enrich their application and let it land on the Azure platform. So an example of a big grocery company in the Netherlands, they had an app, a mobile app. They wanted to add to that mobile app the possibility to take a picture of a fridge, and based on the ingredients that are in the fridge, come up with a recipe for the dinner for that evening. They infuse so the AI tools like Azure Vision and Speech in the mobile app itself, and they let it land on the Azure platform. That is typically an AI integrator where you use a ready-to-use AI service and extend that into your existing application. That is typically an audience where you need the Azure AI Landing Zone for, because you want them set up for success to go to from experiment to production. And the same kind of applies for the AI innovators. The AI innovators go a step further. They do fine-tuning on top of existing models to make it very specific for a typical industry. So for instance, you have financial risk assessments that you need to do, and you can then fine-tune the model to be optimized to do financial risk assessments. And that is typically what you do as an AI innovator. And you use slightly different tools because you maybe build up from the ground up the application using tools like semantic kernel and use AKS Kaito to scale your model in parallel over your compute environment with the great GPU capabilities you have in Azure. So to enable that kind of audiences, you definitely need an AI infrastructure as well to give them a head start and to do that extensive training on the Azure platform. And then the last one are the AI creators, and that are really the Mistrals, the OpenAI of this world, but also the non-Gen AI use cases like Wave, where they train an autonomous driving system in Azure. Those are running at such a scale that probably an AI landing zone gives them a starter kit, but they need some optimization, fine-tuning, etc., because the scale is so large and unique that the standard AI landing zone probably won't fit. So the Azure landing zone is targeted for the AI integrators and the AI innovators. I hope with this I gave you a little bit of an overview where we target the AI landing zone for. If you then go to the next kind of chapter, the AI landing zone is not only about AI tools and LLMs, etc. No, it's just about I have AI capabilities in my Azure platform and I need to integrate them with my existing data. I need to land that AI-infused app on the existing application platform that I already have in Azure, and I need to land that in the existing infrastructure I already have in Azure, so that it's secure, well-connected and well-governed from a security and management perspective. So the AI landing zone is really about the integration of AI in your existing landing zone. So I hope with this I gave a little bit of an overview where we target the Azure AI landing zone for. And for the ones that are not familiar with landing zones, I go now shortly tell you a little bit over the general landing zones that are available in Azure and the landing zone concept. So the landing zone concept in Azure is part of the Cloud Adoption Framework and is an opinionated guidance to set up your Azure platform for enterprise-ready usage. It typically has two layers. So one is the basic platform to set up the Azure platform, and the workload landing zones, and that are specialized landing zones for typical workloads like SAP, modern apps and AI. If you want to know more, you can go to our website and search for the Cloud Adoption Framework. And there you see also the differentiation between the platform landing zone and the application landing zone I just shared in the previous slide. If you then look into what kind of is the customer journey or the adoption of the landing zone concept, is that the first step is really to bootstrap your environment. So to set up your platform with the generic components like network connectivity with your on-prem data centers, firewalling, network security, DDoS protection, etc. So that creates really your fundament, your basic platform. Next to that, when you have that basic platform ready, you go into the landing zone vending concept. And the landing zone concept is really that your consumers just submit a request to get a landing zone for running their workload, fully automated, and they get an isolated landing zone delivered where they can develop their application, validate it, and go to production. And then you really go to the deployment of the workloads. And as I said, that are the workload landing zones, and the AI landing zone is part of that. This is really, in a brief overview, the concept of the platform and the workload landing zones. The subscription vending, I already touched on that, and the principle behind that is that you automate everything. So you submit a request based on a form to request a couple of information items from the application team, and then totally automatically provision that new environment for that application team to get ready from development towards test, towards acceptation, towards a production environment. So let's go now a little bit deeper in AI landing zones. And we are going to do here a role play. So, Nick, you are
the CIO.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm the consultant of Sunny Azure Services. And I'm going to help Nick with the journey to AI landing zones. Nick,
Yeah.
can you share a little bit more about your use case?
Yeah, use case. I'm a bit overwhelmed, Dylan, to be honest, because I have business units wanting to embrace Azure, wanting to embrace AI actually. I have more than 100 different generative AI use cases. I don't know how to start. I want to facilitate. I need to facilitate the business, obviously, but it's for me. I'm struggling. I have a feeling that the train, in many ways, has already left the station. I see my business units moving ahead, and I'm so like at the end, at the beginning of it still. So I'm trying to catch up. I see sensitive data workloads going into Azure or going into the cloud. I don't have control over it. And at the end of the day, we don't start from scratch. We have something already. Yeah, we're not starting from greenfield. So I'm struggling with that. And by the way, we've done investments over the years. How can I make sure that everything that we've done in the past will go in vain and will not be dissolved? Let's say. Can you help me?
I hope so. I think so. So you already invested a couple of years back in the platform landing zone, right?
Yeah.
So you have a well-governed concept of Azure landing zones and your business is using that. But as far as I understand, they are now going wild with all kind of AI initiatives in your organization and you feel like, okay, am I still in control? Do I do my best? And are they already in production?
Yeah,
with those
I'm a bit in the dark.
Oh, you don't know yet?
I'm a bit in the dark.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I have a feeling that this is happening. Please, can you expand on how can I address this? How can I start?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I think I got your point. And the AI landing zone might be a very good solution for you to get a more governed approach over all the AI initiatives that are running in your organization. So what the AI landing zone is delivering on top of your basic platform that you already have is proper resource management. So you can define which AI services are allowed to be used by your business. With that and all the policy configuration you can do, you collect all the information back to your platform. So you have insights in security. And you can leverage tools like you already use for Defender, Sentinel, but also for monitoring. So you have central oversight and standard tooling for observability. You have ways to integrate the AI services with your data in a controlled way. So for instance, using private endpoints, as you already defined in your basic landing zone. And with that, you can also have the optimization around monitoring. So you have full oversight over what is happening and how actions are traveling through your application landscape. So that is not an isolated approach. So let me show that as well with a picture. You're familiar with the basic landing zone concept. You see that in this picture with the red box around it, that is the AI landing zone concept. You see all kind of different services in there. Not all of them are AI services, but they're also services to govern the security, connectivity, etc. And when you follow this pattern, you have a kind of opinionated starting point to get a well-governed start with Azure AI landing zones. So let me go a little bit deeper. One of your most critical things is private networking, right? Because you don't want to connect things over the internet. So what the AI landing zone with the policy concept generates for you is that every AI workload that is being deployed is connected over private endpoints. So it's privately connected with your hub and you can govern that with your Azure firewall and then also protect it with DDoS protection and govern the connectivity with other workloads. Inside that network, we also offer inside that Azure AI landing zone, there are also other capabilities to make the connectivity to your AI models more secure and more governed. One of them is the API gateway, and maybe we can touch on later on that, but as well the app gateway. Another part is policies, right? So we have the governance, you have the management group structure with the subscriptions underneath, and with all the policies that come with the Azure AI landing zone, You can set those policies at the highest level if you need, or at a lower level depending on the type of environment that you want to service. If you want to have a more relaxed approach in the development environment, you can do that. And if you want to have a more strict approach in the production environment, you can do that as well, if you want that. Because sometimes you also want to have those environments the same. So the concepts around policies all work in the same way as with the standard landing zone. And of course, you can control the typical AI specific things with the policy set that comes with the Azure AI landing zone. And as we said, it integrates with your standard monitoring like Azure Monitor and Sentinel.
Okay, this sounds great. This gives me a bit more control, let's say. They have another priority, that's costs, right? So say, one hand, I have all these AI use cases popping up, which will cost me, obviously. At the end of the day, I also, can I start maybe using shared services in some ways? How can I further optimize, the way of working, using cost optimizations or anything like that?
Yeah, and that the balance between shared and dedicated services. So in the previous slide, I showed a couple of services that were collected in that AI landing zone. And the amount of shared versus dedicated really depends on the type of organization you have. So if you have more central control, you probably want to have more shared services. And if you have a more kind of, okay, let it go, everybody is on his own and develops at its own pace, you will have less shared services. But of course, it comes also with a cost implication, because some of those services are really meant to be a shared service. And let me give an example here. So API management is the AI gateway in the Azure AI Landing Zone setup. And let me share a little bit about the details later. But that one is not meant to be implemented every time for every project, because that generates a lot of overhead. What you can do with API management is share that instance with all your AI projects you have in your company. So maybe it's good that we go a little bit further in what API management can deliver for you, and to have a better understanding of what this shared component is in the Azure AI Landing Zone. So the AI gateway is kind of sitting in between your AI-infused apps and your LLMs, your models. And what the AI gateway is, it's built on top of API management. And probably you want to govern which models, generative AI models, your organization can use, right? Definitely. Because you have the demand from your CISO, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And that you can do with API management. So you can kind of publish the models that are allowed within your organization to be used. And you give then developers or teams in the business the ability to sign up for the usage of those models. So you have insight who's going to use those models, and you have control over what do they want to do with those models, and also the consumption rate they are going to consume from those models. So for instance, around large language models, everything is about tokens, right? Tokens cost money and token consumption, and you don't have an unlimited set of tokens available per model deployment. With the AI gateway, you have the ability to give a certain amount of tokens to an application, and in that way control the usage that the team is consuming from your shared AI models. And with that, you have an insight to do also chargeback to those teams, to charge them based on their usage.
So with its gateway, I can use this actually as sort of like a cost optimization lever, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can, for instance, you might also consider PTUs, so pre-purchased throughput units. Then you get with Microsoft a certain amount of discount for your Gen AI models, and you want to consume them first, right? Because you have a better price for that than the pay-as-you-go variants. So what you can do is balance that on your own pace and your own insights, while that whole thing is abstracted away from the consumers.
Okay.
Next to that, with API management, you have also the ability to do load balance and do a kind of availability high availability. So if an app goes to production, maybe it's so successful that it suddenly consumes a lot more tokens, and you can't deliver that with your existing model deployment in the current region at this moment. What you then can do centrally is just do another deployment next to the existing one and balance the load over those different deployments. That's completely hidden away from your consumers. So they don't have to think about scalability, etc. You do that and you centrally manage that, and then you can also cost optimize that for your implementations.
That sounds good. I think the developers are happy with this, reducing the cognitive load in the process, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, because they don't think about this. They just bring their application to production and then suddenly they run into scaling issues. But typically that was hidden for them in the past, right? When they didn't do operations.
Yeah, love it.
And of course, authentication, authorization is important. You can fully use Azure Managed Identity from the AI gateway to the models, of course, to do authentication and use other protocols in the front for authentication. So also that gives you the flexibility, and with that you have insight of the usage. All that usage is stored in Azure Monitor, of course, but you also can trace your applications, and also the traceability via API management is visible with application management.
Well, that's a lot of information. One of the things that I hear a lot is AI Foundry. I want to know how this all relates to that piece. I see that my business units really want to embrace AI Foundry. Can you expand a little bit on that? How does it relate to the AI landing zone, let's say?
Yeah, I can understand that it's a bit confusing, right? So the AI landing zone is really to set up your platform, and AI Foundry is really to enable your developers, the consumers of AI, to have a controlled, governed way of developing applications with a lot of starting points in AI Foundry to help them to get moving fast and move fast to production. So let me explain a little bit more about what AI Foundry is. So AI Foundry, from a governance perspective, that's what I now touch on, is the possibility where you have a hub. That's a kind of a central resource, and in that hub you define all kind of governance capabilities, like the data sources you would like to make available in your environment, the models you want to make available in your environment, the persons that are assigned to those environments, so role-based access controls, lifetimes, etc. So that's a kind of a central place that's called the hub, where you can set up all kind of governance rules, and then you have projects underneath that you can define, and you can hand out a project to an application team or to a business unit to develop their own AI applications or infused applications. And the whole workflow was really around developing AI integrated solutions and controlling to which resources you have access.
Sounds great, but how does it now relate to the AI Foundry, let's say? Yeah? So we have that landing zone. I don't really understand the connection to the standalone landing zone and the AI Foundry, let's say.
Yeah. So the standard AI landing zone, or the standalone AI landing zone, is really to set up your infrastructure. So to make your platform ready to consume AI services. AI Foundry is really there as a governed environment for the business and the application teams to develop their AI applications. But it's not the only way to develop AI applications. So they can also develop it outside of AI Foundry. So if you have AI Foundry, for instance, it's very good for you to have it in a controlled way to develop those applications, and you get a lot of guidance with the content safety framework in it, with the evaluation SDK, with the ability to connect to resources, to test and validate it via the chat app, the agentic integrations that are there, and the use of different models, the evaluations, etc. But it also comes with some guardrails. So you can do certain amount of things in AI Foundry. For most of the teams, it's great. It's a great starting point. It's great to develop their application, bring them to production there. But there are also use cases that are not really suitable to land in Foundry, or those teams don't want to use other frameworks or tools to use. And then still that lands on the standalone landing zone. So they are kind of contributing to each other, but it's not needed that you have to have AI Foundry per se on top of your standard AI landing zone. Your standard AI landing zone is really your groundwork, your fundament you always need, and then it's an optionality to have AI Foundry on top. And they are better together. And let me show that in the next picture. So there's also a variant of the AI landing zone picture with an AI Foundry integrated in the Azure AI landing zone. So for instance, with the Azure AI landing zone, as a developer, I have to create my own private endpoints, right? To connect to Cosmos database or to SQL database, or to connect my application running on web apps to OpenAI. I have to create the connections myself in my deployment pipelines. AI Foundry is giving me a head start there because it arranges that for me already. So it's also lowering the complexity for those teams to get started with AI from an infrastructure perspective. So it's a kind of an optionality, it's a decision, it depends, really a consulting answer, but AI Foundry is great, and it's great that your business is already using it, but it totally fits on top of the Azure AI landing zone.
You could say it's like a certain amount of synergy that you could realize with it. 1 + 1 = 3 eventually.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, that's spot on.
Yeah, that sounds also nice, but what about network isolations, right? So I hear teams from the business unit say, you can also do that with AI Foundry. I want to expand a little bit still. It's a long answer.
Yeah.
The combination of AI Foundry landing zones. Let's expand on that a little bit. With that network isolation piece, how does that relate to each other?
Yeah. So the standalone Azure AI landing zone gives you that network isolation for your workloads, right? AI Foundry delivers that also on top of those principles. So maybe I can best show it in a picture. So AI Foundry has different components. One of the components is a kind of a developer portal that you need to access to develop your AI-ready applications. You can lock down access to that portal using private endpoints. So that is fully in line with the standard landing zone. But you can configure that by default in the hub configuration of AI Foundry. Then in the hub configuration, remember you also said, okay, which models, which resources can I use as a project member in AI Foundry over a private connection. So if you look here at number 2, you can privately connect to the compute or databases or services that you need in your AI Foundry project, and AI Foundry is handling that for you already. And as well, if you need access to resources on the internet, you can allow that on a per project basis, or you can say, okay, I totally lock that down. So the policies you have set on your standalone landing zone, you can also apply them on the AI Foundry level, on a project or a hub level. So they are completely in line. And yes, it's a decision. What do you want to do? Do you lock it down in AI Foundry, and is that a kind of your governance space, or do you lock it down in your AI landing zone? So with that, I hope I gave you a little bit of an insight of what the AI landing zone is, what AI Foundry is. I hope as well that I gave you a little bit of insight for which kind of audiences you can use the AI landing zone. Is that correct? Is it?
Yeah, this resonates. And I think one of the takeaways for me is also, I think there's a lot of stuff available, a lot of options, but at the end of the day, it also is depending on the way I organize myself as an organization, right? So like the technology is there, but you know, it all needs to relate, like how I'm currently being organized as a company.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little bit of a sidestep. Maybe I also need to think about how I'm currently being organized, how I organize my IT workforce, let's say, because you know there's a lot possible here, but you know, in order for me to really unleash this power, I need to think about this piece, the organization and people piece. But you know, it's a tough cookie to crack, I would say. Maybe more on that later. But it gets me thinking as a CIO.
And that's spot on, because the AI landing zone is not a golden bullet or a total solution. It's an opinionated guidance how to implement this on top of Azure landing zones and how to have a well-governed environment. But is it matching all the pieces? Probably not. It's giving you 70% starter kit in an opinionated way, and you have to add your own opinion on top of that. So probably you have additional needs from a regulatory compliance perspective, so you need to develop a couple of policies yourself to better control the AI environment. So don't see it as, okay, I can start tomorrow, I'm ready and I'm done. It's really about, okay, what do I need to add on top? What fits with my organization? And what other capabilities in the Azure AI platform and the AI infrastructure fits for my organization as well. So it's really not like, okay, I can switch it on and I'm done.
I'm a little bit triggered by this all, because the thing that it now spawns up in my head is Conway's law. Like the way I've been organizing my whole organization, that actually replicates the systems and the way we organize the systems around it, right? So it all starts with the way I organize everything. So in some sense, we can have a lot of discussions around the technical details, but at the end of the day, if I don't cover this in the right way, eventually all the solutions will flow in a similar structure, right? So again, this triggers me. Thanks for that.
And I think also from that perspective, the AI Ready landing zone and the usage of AI Founder really helps you, because the technicalities are managed by the Azure AI landing zone and AI Foundry. But it is really how I want to adopt that or you want to adopt it in your own organization, where you have to think about. So focus in that transition or adoption on your own needs and not so much on the technicalities, because they are arranged in a landing zone, and maybe you need to fine-tune that a bit to your own needs. But don't start with the technology. Don't start with, okay, how do I implement this in my organization so that they can speed up? Because it's all about rapidly scaling from a proof of value to production. Otherwise, we stay in the proof of value stage, and we have a lot of extra cognitive load for those developers. And that is what we want to solve for those developers, and as well scale out in production, right? Operate at scale and do multiple projects at the same time, and in a secure and governed way.
Love it. Maybe this is a way how we can address maybe a little bit of shadow IT that I have running up in my organization, I think. But thanks.
Yeah. If you don't enable your developers, then they will go their own way, right?
Yeah. I will become irrelevant as a CIO and as an IT organization if I don't do it in the right way, let's say. Yeah. So thanks.
Okay, with this I hope that we gave you a little bit of insight about the Azure AI landing zone, and also the challenges that maybe an organization faces with the adoption of AI. And thank you for attending.